Hey there all my witchy spooky people, thank you so much for checking out this Q&A. It is, as you will see from the title, Samhain and Halloween themed, and it has been fueled by the lovely people that follow me on Instagram. I asked them for some questions to fit the theme of the season and they came up with some right corkers. So without further ado, I'm going to dive right in because I want to answer as many as I can during the time I've allotted to do this. So hopefully you will find this interesting. I know I will find this interesting to do. Quite a lot of people are asking me for rituals that you can do at Samhain, ritual ideas, and I would definitely recommend looking up some of the classic ones. One that comes to mind straight away is the notion of having yourself a dumb supper, so basically like taking dinner with the dead, if you will. You can look that up. There are rituals that are specific to the themes of death and also the themes of fear. You know, you can look up different things that are already in existence that kind of have their roots in different areas and make them your own, and think about what kind of inspiration you might want to take from those things. What I like to do in terms of ritual changes year on year, but normally I will do some kind of an address to the energy of the season and some kind of an address also to my matron deity. And by address I mean something that I've written that usually includes poetry, that is basically kind of a welcome and an honouring piece of writing, if you will. So I always do that. I always sling some cards or do the runes. I always do some kind of divination at Samhain for myself, looking into really deep themes of stuff that I'm going through. I start really powerful spells on Samhain. Sometimes I begin a candle spell on Samhain that is supposed to go right the way through to Imbolc, and I've done that a few times. That's been really effective. I really enjoy doing fire magic for Samhain. I really enjoy getting the cauldron going and kind of writing some stuff down and burning it, and this is to represent, you know, the banishing of certain things from my life and the welcoming in of other things to my life, just with it being kind of Witch's New Year and everything. So I really enjoy doing that too. What is your opinion on death as it relates to healing yourself, having an aspect of yourself die to birth a new one? Oh yeah, I totally believe that we go through different phases in our lives where we are different versions of ourselves, and I've spoken about this before in one of my private resources, and I believe it was for Self-Love September on a certain year. I did talk actually about how you can define what the different versions of yourself have been and how helpful it is to actually look at that. And of course, for somebody who believes that you can have different versions of self, then I must by the same token believe that old versions die, and it's not as though they never had any influence, and it's not as though you know, they're not a part of your dynamic character, but they fall into memory. You are no longer that person. You have become almost a new version of you. So I definitely believe that can happen. I definitely believe it's beneficial. I for sure believe that sometimes an old version of self needs to die, and there is a struggle, there is a power struggle, there's a struggle for the old version to survive, and sometimes that's because of fear, and I could talk about that a lot. I could go into that hardcore, but yeah, I do agree very much with the, you know, the value of the analogy of death of a version of self in order to birth a new version of self. And I think sometimes we don't know when it's time for that to happen, and it can be a really weird thing to suddenly recognize, like, oh, I'm evolving, I'm changing, I'm progressing, I'm changing shape. And it can be scary and sad, and I think that's why a lot of people don't want it to happen and don't really enjoy it when it happens. But it can lead to great things, and it can be the seed of so much post-traumatic growth. What are your favourite methods of spellcraft and why? I really love to do sympathetic magic, particularly magic using my poppet. I find that really useful. I have a poppet that contains, you know, my fingernails and my hair and all that good shizzle, and I use that to bring healing to myself, to bring awareness to myself, to you know, strengthen my conviction, all kinds of different things. I use it when I'm feeling out of sorts, and that's very helpful. I think the reason I love poppet magic so much is that it feels so literal, and it feels like you can instantly sense the empathy that you have for the poppet as it pertains to someone else in your life or as it pertains to you, and I find that to be useful. And also it's really good for the visualization. If you've got ailments or if you've got heartache or any of that stuff and you work on a poppet that is intended to represent you, it's a really good instant you know, visual aid that can kind of serve your creative visualizations. I love art magic. I love using the creation and destruction of art in magic in a lot of different ways, and you know, that I have found to be very effective. What other kinds of magic do I really love? I like story magic, which I think is a form of art magic, where I write down the creative story, the literary event of what I want to be the case, and work with that. I actually have come back around to candle magic. I do really enjoy doing that over the last kind of year or so. I've definitely had candle magic spells on the go. And I also really enjoy affirmations lately as well. Affirmations are not usually, they don't usually find themselves within the kinds of paradigms that I work with and enjoy. But when I decided to make a few lifestyle changes a couple of months ago, I thought I'm going to try some affirmations and see what's up with that. And the results have been amazing, so I definitely can't knock affirmations. So they're becoming a little bit of a favourite type of magic for me. I do enjoy tarot magic, and I do have a big video on using tarot for magic and spellcraft. I'll leave that down below for you, so you can check that out if you haven't already. It is 40 minutes of magical fun with me. And, you know, I really still do love using tarot and oracle for my magic as well. I like to, well, there's so many different things I like to do. If you watch the tarot magic video, it will give you some idea. It scratches the surface anyway of the kinds of things that I like to do with the cards in the circle. If you could be a villain from any scary or horror movie, what would you be? This includes Disney and cartoon villains, not just adult movies. Oh, that's really hard. I'd probably be Hannibal from Silence of the Lambs, and Hannibal Rising. I really like Hannibal Lecter as far as villains go. He's like a real anti-hero, so I really enjoy him. I'm just trying to think if there's anyone else. I don't know, I'd probably be Mama from Mama, right? Like, she's incredible. I want to go down with her into the lake. Fuck this life, I want to be with her. You know, she's awesome and gives me real death goddess vibes, so yeah, I'd probably be her as well. I love her creeping around in that house and the animatronic movements that she does and stuff. Mama's a great film, really enjoy that film. Oh, and Maleficent, how could I forget Maleficent? When I was younger, I wanted to be Maleficent so badly. I wanted to be either Maleficent from Sleeping Beauty, or I wanted to be the Wicked Witch from The Wizard of Oz. I loved her long witchy fingers and her hourglass and her mortar and pestle, and I used to pretend I was her all the time. And I had, like, you know, I had the hourglass with the green sand in it and the mortar and pestle. And I used to go, "I'll get you, my pretty, and your little dog too." I still am her somewhere deep down inside, I'm sure. And I did love the White Witch as well from The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, the BBC TV series, guys, not the movie. Although I think it was Tilda Swinton that played the White Witch in the movie, which is really cool, but I really loved the White Witch from the BBC series. I love the fact that she had black hair, and I thought one day I'm going to grow up and I'm going to look just like her. I'm going to have a crown just like that. What's your opinion on the newest Thor movie and its portrayal of hell? Are you bothered by it, or do you not mind? I've been curious of your thoughts since I saw the first trailer. Guys, I don't like it when film companies take mythological systems, ancient pantheons, and use the stories and do like watered down versions of stories for mainstream consumption. But I know that it's like my problem and I need to just get over it. It's just, it doesn't do anything for me, to be honest with you. I remember a while ago I was looking for images of Loki online, and every time I fucking Google image search Loki, I just got images of Loki from these fucking comic movies. Clearly I don't know anything about them. Or when you search Thor now, there's just loads of pictures of this really like hench guy that's Thor in the movies, and it's just like, for fuck's sake, I'm looking for artistic depictions of ancient deities. Christ on a banana, can I not get what I want? So aside from the fact that it clogs up Google image search, I also don't like the fact, and this is again, it's elitism, it's snobbery, okay, it's neo-pagan bullshit, but I can't help it because they mean so much to me, these mythologies, and I'm so into the systems, and I don't know the most about them by any stretch of the imagination. There's loads more that I need to learn, but I suppose as a Jungian witch as well, I've got the sense that they are very valuable, these stories, and they are shifting out of human consciousness. Obviously we don't learn them anymore in any kind of mainstream way. We don't really learn them in school, or we don't learn a lot about them in school, and I don't like the fact that the encounters that young people are having with these mythological systems and stories is like this, you know? I just feel like it's gonna poison their minds. Make them read Kevin Crossley Holland's Norse myths. Don't let them watch this shit. No, God no. Having said that, I've got to be honest, I've seen the trailer, and obviously the depiction of hell that they have is pretty kick-ass. Like, I like the outfits, and she seems really awesome in that role. I'm loving it. But it's just, you know, if it was like, if I saw that character in a trailer and it wasn't hell, and it wasn't connected to anything that I actually care about and am clearly incredibly snobby about, then I'd be like, wow, that character looks really awesome, you know? But the fact that it's hell, and the fact that they're just basically taking this great big gorgeous system of mythology that means so much to me and just sort of like breaking it down and sticking it back together with a load of tripe, it's not for me. I'm not keen on it, but that's just my opinion. What are your opinions? Leave them down below. I'd love to read some opinions from you guys on that. What's your favourite haunted place? I mean, I'm not really into haunted places, but Bodmin Jail in Cornwall is really cool. There is a really odd vibe there. You can go out to the place in the back courtyard where they used to perform capital punishment. And yeah, it's just creepy. The little staircases, and when you go into the kind of different rooms in the jail, you just get the heebie-jeebies. They do say it's haunted, so you can actually go and stay there overnight. I believe they do that occasionally. So Bodmin Jail's a really good one in Cornwall. Really, really awesome place to visit as well. Do you have a particular Halloween ritual, like a themed film marathon, visiting somewhere, etc.? Not really. In terms of Halloween, everything sort of changes up from year to year, but I normally don't get through any Halloween of any year without watching at least one horror movie, and there will usually be something at the cinema as well that I do want to see. Like, I just went to see with a couple of friends the movie It, so you know, there's always like one horror movie that we watch that comes out around this time. But yeah, there'll be some classics as well. Like this year I really fancy watching the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, so that's probably going to happen in the next couple of nights. So I really like horror movies. I really enjoy them. I'm not always in the mood to go to Halloween parties and stuff like that. The thing is with Halloween is I love Halloween so much, but it is a distinctly different vibe and a different energy from Samhain for me. Now there is some overlap, of course, and I am playful. That I do like to have Halloween things on my altar. I've got at the moment a jack-o'-lantern candle holder, and I do like the skeleton-y bits and all the rest of it. But you know, there is obviously this sense of reverence, and it's a sacred time, and it's important for me to celebrate that sacred time. So there's always a little bit of compromise when it comes to Halloween and how much time I want to spend having fun and freaking myself out and watching films and going to parties, versus how much time I want to spend in deep meditation, sitting at the altar, doing mirror work and that kind of thing. So it's just kind of, you know, there's a little bit of back and forth. Tomorrow night I'm going to a sort of Fright Night style thing at a theme park, which is going to be cool, like an amusement park, so that'll be a nice touch. So I am up for doing things like that, but I'm also get super serial around this time, of course, because it is such an important time for me in the calendar. Can you talk about bizarre dreams and extrasensory experiences that happen when the veil is thin? I've been having the weirdest things happening. Yeah, all kinds of weird and wonderful shizzle tends to occur at this time of year, actually. Some people experience incredibly vivid dreams, or they have stronger dream recall, or they experience lucid dreaming. Some people experience nightmares. Some people see ancestors in their dreams, people who've passed on, who are no longer with us. Some people say they have experiences of talking to people who've passed on. Some people say that they have experiences of being able to know what's going to happen to themselves or others in the future. There's quite a big spectrum of different things that can occur. I think some people are very drawn to certain things as well. They might be drawn to particular locations. They might be drawn to graveyards, for example. They might be drawn to spend time in a particular place in their town or in their home. And there's a lot of stuff that's sort of unexplained, but it's more just like an intuitive feeling that you've got to do something, or you've got to be somewhere, you know? So there is a lot of that kind of thing that goes on. I would definitely say that if there's anything unpleasant happening to you, then you can look into shielding and protecting, making sure that you are taking at least a couple of steps to ensure that you feel as though your energy is not being messed with, and you feel a sense of empowerment and control whilst dealing with these things. But it is definitely for sure that the energies are pretty intense. I mean, for me, it comes through in different ways. I tend to find, for example, in my reading practice for clients, that the messages that come through can often be even more challenging than usual. There are more challenging messages. There are more shadow work elements in a reading, even if it is not a shadow work reading. And I get very much more emotional doing readings at this time of year. I tend to cry more often when we're on the eve of Samhain and I'm doing readings and stuff, you know, very close to Samhain. I get weepy. I really feel like I'm taking on the emotions and the energies a lot more, so there's that to the equation. I definitely feel obviously more moved to do certain kinds of personal development work, like mirror work and things like that. You know, and sometimes in previous years I felt edgy and I felt as though everything is a little bit less solid than usual. Consensus reality is not operating on quite so much of a solid ground as it normally is. I've definitely felt that and experienced that. It seems like this time of year is a time where people play with the feeling of fear, decorate their house with stuff that would usually make them scared, think of the dead, the spirits, etc., which are often associated with the idea of scary. I'd love to know your vision of how fear is treated in society and how sacred and beautiful it can be as a fuel for a deeper self-knowledge and self-development. I really love this whole question. I could do a whole video on it. I think it's really interesting that at this time of year we embrace fear and we have fun with it. We have fun with our fear and we kind of freak ourselves out, and it's like that roller coaster vibe where we want to shit ourselves up and we want to raise our heart rate. I think that's really cool and interesting. I personally think that the things that make us afraid can tell us things about ourselves, but I don't know the extent to which that is the way others think. I think primarily that we can joke during Halloween about a lot of things that are normally not funny. And I don't mean that in terms of being inappropriate. I just mean that, you know, we can really interface, for example, with a lot of the imagery of death, but it's in a way that's lighthearted, and it's in a way that, in a sense, kind of reminds us that death is a part of life and death is a part of the process. But for a lot of people, I don't think it's that serious, whereas I take it all the way. I really think about it. I really go into it big time. But that's me, you know, and I think that's a lot of people that watch my channel as well, is that we would look at some of the antics that go on during Halloween with like the fright nights and the parties where people dress up as corpses and all that kind of thing, and we would take that to a kind of Jungian conclusion. We would look at that as an interesting element of societal interaction with death and fear and, you know, all those kinds of things. Rot, attack, you know, violence even. It's interesting. So I think we would take it a lot deeper, maybe. I certainly do. I also think, though, that there is an interesting shadow side to that as well, where if you look at some of the costumes that are for sale during the Halloween period, you can really see the bias that people have towards certain groups of people. You can really see that a lot of people are still inherently afraid of people who look different to them or think differently to them. You know, we've had scandals where Walmart and Target have had to sort of do away with costumes that represent, you know, urban inner city thugs or fucking mentally ill people that have escaped from asylums. When you look at these things, you can see the shadows coming out, and that is also very blatantly displayed, and that's also something that I look at and it interests me and it really dismays me a lot. And of course you've got that whole thing as well of people kind of just wearing culturally insensitive costumes and stuff. So I think that comes out as well, and that shows us what we are afraid of that we just shouldn't be afraid of, and what we have chosen to disparage or demean that we really shouldn't have done. So there's that to it as well. I mean, there's a whole fucking video of rambles in there somewhere, I'm sure. What tarot cards would you say talk about being haunted? In a standard tarot deck, which cards talk about being haunted? That is a fucking interesting question. Let me think, darling. That is just absolutely flummoxed me. I don't know. I'm going through the tarot cards in my head now to just try and decide. I'm going to say the Five of Cups because it's really about being haunted by the past. It's being haunted by the ghosts of your prior selves or your prior interactions with others. So I'm going to say that is what comes to mind as being haunted. But the reason that I took so long to figure that out was because I was trying to think about which cards represent being haunted by a ghost, and I couldn't really think of that. But as soon as I kind of put it in psycho-spiritual terms, obviously it all became very clear to me that Five of Cups is what I would choose for that kind of haunted anyway. In terms of being haunted, I mean, it depends. If you're afraid of being haunted and you're trying to, you're trying to stop it, then I would say Nine of Swords probably. Because Nine of Swords is like, you're being tormented, you're scared, you can't deal with what it is that you're seeing or feeling. So I reckon that probably, if we're talking about actually being haunted by apparitions and not the psycho-spiritual jazz that I'm always turning my head towards, then I would say Nine of Swords. Yeah, Nine of Swords for being haunted. There's more people asking if it's normal to have a physical reaction to the veil thinning, or asking me to talk more about reactions that occur during this time of year. It's definitely normal as far as I'm concerned. Have a chat in the comments if anybody also feels like they feel fuzzy or distracted or out of sorts or any of those things as Samhain begins to approach. I would love to know from you guys. I'd love to hear from you guys, and maybe some interactions around that topic will help people to feel less concerned about things that they are experiencing. I mean, for me, it is a wild time of year. That's why it's important for me, as I said earlier, to have that compromise between the fun Halloween shit, with the plastic witchy fingers, which I absolutely in no way have purchased, because I would never do that because I'm a fucking grown-up. But there's got to be that compromise. I can't just be Halloween, 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 because I'm aware that the energies that occur at this time, the way that I feel, and the stuff that I'm tapping into, it's gold. It can't be wasted. I need to do deep work at the altar at that time. So I'd be lying if I said that I also didn't feel these effects, but I find them to be very positive. And I have not really for a very long time had difficult experiences. But if you have, or if you do feel that it's weird at this time for you, please write down below and explain your experiences, so other people can also kind of get that sense that if they are experiencing things of that nature, it's not weird and it's not to be worried about. What was your favourite costume to wear on Halloween as a kid? I was Belle from Beauty and the Beast for like 4 years straight. That's really cool. I tend to find that in this country, or when I was growing up anyway in this country, it wasn't really normal for kids to dress up as things that weren't scary or Halloween-y, I think it's more normal now for kids to just dress up, and it doesn't necessarily have to be to do with horror or related to something scary. But when I was growing up, I'm 32, I was going to say 33. Don't get ahead of yourself, Kellyanne. It's not your birthday till December. I'm 32, so it's been a while now since I was very young. And when I was growing up, it wasn't usual for kids to dress up as princesses and superheroes. It was a lot more usual for kids to dress up as like zombies and ghosts and that kind of thing. But I do remember being dressed up once by my mum for Halloween as Pebbles from the Flintstones, with the little bone in my hair, and the bone was like glow in the dark, and I had the dress with the jagged edges and the leopard print, and that was just fucking awesome. I loved that, and I had a really, really high ponytail. She just styled it really perfectly, and yeah, that was a really, really cool outfit. I remember that to this day. That was really awesome. Which tarot cards will best represent the spirit of Halloween? Death, obviously. The Devil, clearly. Those two for sure. I reckon probably also the Magician. The Magician is also a good one. That whole thing of magic and ritual and all that good shizzle. I think the High Priestess, because I think of the High Priestess really as such a reflection of the archetype of the witch. So for me, the High Priestess definitely has got a Samhain vibe. I also would say that, hang on, was the question Samhain or Halloween? Oh, the spirit of Halloween. Oh well, there's some overlap. Let's say for Samhain though, Judgment is a good card, because it's really about conscious awakening and conscious development, conscious progression to a new phase, and that's what we often use Samhain as a time to mark. It's really a time to get right with our resolutions and think about how we want to progress. So Judgment, definitely. Ten of Swords is also a really good one for the spirit of Halloween. Murder and mayhem, blood, death and destruction. A lot of witchy folks see this time of year as the time when the veil between our world and the spirit world is thin. How do you feel about that? I don't mind that as a concept, I think that is really attractive to me, and I definitely would say, as I've mentioned previously in this video, that there are incredible energies and an incredible spectrum of possibility at this time of year in association with this festival. However, I don't see the thinning of the veil as only being between the living and the dead. I see the thinning of the veil also as being the thinning between imagination and consensus reality. I see it as the thinning of the veil between dreaming and wakefulness. I see it as the blurring of lines between things which we would normally consider to be oppositional in their nature, or contradictory in their nature even. And so I could go further into that, but I hope I've kind of set the premise. I think for me, the thinning of the veil is about much more than the idea of the realm of the living and the realm of the dead kind of being closer together. I also have a great big framework of ideas behind death as far as I see it. So for me, the idea of the thinning of the veil between the living and the dead is actually not as important to me as a concept. It's not as exciting to me as other kind of avenues that I could go down with the idea of the thinning of the veil. Do you do ancestral work in general? And if so, is Halloween or Samhain a time you like to focus to connect with ancestors? I don't do ancestral work. It's not really my bag, baby. It's not something that's ever called to me, and I highly doubt that it ever will call to me, to be honest with you. I could be wrong, but that's just how I feel. It's just not something that's ever spoken to me. I certainly do commemorative work, I suppose you could say, around certain individuals or certain groups of individuals. I like to do memoriams to specific, you know, people that were the victims of certain wars or certain atrocities. I like to take time to honour those who have passed on, usually without much commemoration or recognition. That's really important for me to do at the altar, and I have actually filmed myself doing that for the channel before, quite a long time ago, where I acknowledged not necessarily the deaths of people, but the pain of women that have experienced violence during war. And particularly the plight of comfort women. And this is the kind of thing that I do at my altar quite regularly. So this is the kind of thing that I do, and I think that's a form of ancestral work in the sense that I'm honouring my fellow human beings. But in terms of ancestral work as thinking about my actual bloodline, I'm just not bothered. I just don't. That to me is not something that is particularly powerful, and I doubt that it ever will be. I will say though, for those among you who are interested in ancestral work and are disappointed by my response, Ember Honeyraven has just made a fucking great video about ancestral work and also shadow work. I watched it this morning and I absolutely loved it so much. I left a comment, which I don't always leave comments, but I left a comment saying this is amazing, and it really I think will be helpful for a lot of people who are looking to do ancestral work. So it might be a good starting point for you. So I'll leave that in the down bar below, and anyone who's not subscribed to Ember, anyone who's been living under a rock and doesn't know who Ember is, you can subscribe and you're welcome, because she's fucking amazing. So many people want to know my favourite food and drink for this time of year. Dark chocolate. I can't help but buy a little bit of dark chocolate, usually flavoured. Today I just bought some mint and lemon dark chocolate. I really enjoy just sitting at my altar, sucking on a cube of dark chocolate and writing in my journal, or lying in bed on the morning of Halloween and writing in my journal. Oh, I just fucking love that feeling so much. I can't wait for it. I'm so excited. Samhain is around the time that I normally buy some dark chocolate drinking powder as well, so I can have drinking chocolate, hot chocolate as it were. Yeah, just a tip, dark chocolate is really good to help you to ground after ritual. The darker the better, really. I can't really handle 85% dark chocolate, but 70% is kind of like my limit, really. If you can go all the way to 85, then good luck. But yeah, a bit of 70% dark chocolate after a very intense ritual will definitely be of service to you if you like that kind of thing. I feel really bad because I've just noticed that lots of people are asking me about ancestral work. I know it's a really important thing for a lot of people at the time of Samhain. Like I said, I personally feel like the work that I do that is kind of geared towards memorial and remembrance and honouring of human beings is important as ancestral work for me, because obviously, look, wherever we come from and whoever we share DNA with, we all share DNA with each other. We are all part of the human race. And I'm not on some like ridiculous spiritual bypassing all lives matter bullshit, so don't get it wrong. But you know, I just feel like that is really a form of ancestral work. Whenever I honour, remember, pay my respects, that to me feels like a form of ancestral work. So maybe this will be helpful for those among you who don't relate to ancestral work, because I really don't. So it will help you maybe if you can't figure out how ancestral work would factor into your practice. That really feels right to me, that work. Thinking about maybe people that I share a plight with and doing something to honour them, considering people that are dealing with oppression or problems now and sending power to them and acknowledging them. I feel like that's a form of work that you can do obviously every day in your life and should be doing if you possibly can. But I also think those things can be taken to the altar as well, and there's something really important about doing that work at the altar too, so that I'm not just going through the motions, so that it's not just something that I'm emotionally divorced from when I'm trying to help or be of service or understand different people and what they're going through, but also so that I'm in it, so that I really can feel my feelings about it. I don't know, it's hard to explain, but I've definitely done a lot of in memoriam kind of work, like commemorating people and honouring their passing and recognising their difficulties and stuff like that. And that's probably going to become ever more a part of my practice, to be honest with you. So, and that to me, that's ancestral in nature. What are your favourite vegan Halloween treats? Dark chocolate, as I said, is definitely one. I really enjoy sesame seed snaps. They're really tasty. They're just made with loads of sugar and sesame seeds, and you can just kind of like bite them, and they're really lovely. I definitely enjoy finding any kind of chocolate biscuits I can get my hands on that are vegan. Surprisingly, there are a lot more than you would think. It's quite weird. And if I can find a pack of them and have them with some hot chocolate, then that's a nice thing to do. Really, I just like my usual shit. I just literally treated myself just yesterday to some more jalapeno and garlic stuffed olives, because I just feel like, you know, the treats and stuff, that kind of thing does go up at this time of year. I get really excited, and of course I'm also doing a lot more ritual and witchy bits and pieces, so I do like to have stuff to snack on after I'm done with that, because it can get tiring and very intense. So it's just a lot of the treats that I normally like to have, but I have more of that stuff around maybe, or I snack on it more. I've definitely baked a couple of years. I remember in the Vegan with a Vengeance cookbook, there is a recipe for lemon cookies, and I made that one Samhain and got the icing and kind of like did all the Halloween-y stuff on there, but I haven't done that for a while. That's really not so much my bag anymore. I'm not really as fond of baking as I used to be. Do you think it would benefit those of us who don't work with deities associated with death to consider working with them at this time of year? I think that you could definitely consider learning about them, and you could definitely consider honouring them for sure. Obviously, it's probably not going to be as much of a good use of energy for you to invoke them, you know, like call them in and actually have some kind of a short-term working relationship with them. But your mileage might vary on how much that's useful. You might feel like that's very useful and you really want to do that. But I personally think that's a lot of energy. That would be a lot of energy for me to put into connecting with and communing with a deity that I wasn't planning on taking the relationship further with. But I definitely would recommend looking into death deities and studying the mythological constructs around death, looking at the structure of how myths are made and the patterns that they follow, and looking at how death is treated in mythological structures. Have a look at the way death is treated in fairy tales as well. You know, study death. In fact, it's not even so much connecting with death deities. I think it's really useful and potent to study death itself during this time of year. But definitely look into death deities for sure. Like I said, your mileage might vary on how much you actually want to say, hey, do you want to come and dance with me in the circle this evening or whatever. But I definitely think there's nothing wrong with honouring them, and I for sure think there's nothing wrong with you know, shaking their hand, however it would work for you, whatever the framework would look like for you. Have you had any paranormal experiences or any that stand out? I personally don't like the word paranormal. I don't personally use it. It's not for me. I feel like anything that is the case is within the realm of normality. Obviously, things could be more or less common, but the word paranormal to me doesn't lend itself to me well. I just feel like the stuff that goes on that is less understandable, that is less common, is still stuff that goes on, and it's not something that we should consider to be out of the realm of comprehension. I'm not saying everybody who uses the word paranormal is using it to mean that, you know, there's this untouchable other realm and it fucks with our realm and we don't know anything about it and it's totally out of the bounds of anything we know. I'm not saying everybody who uses the word paranormal thinks that, but I definitely, to me, think of paranormal as being a bit of an unhelpful word, if that makes any sense. So, but in terms of experiences to do with, you know, non-ordinary states of consciousness or things that are outside the bounds of consensus reality, I've definitely had my moments of having experiences, but it's not been a huge part of my journey, to be completely honest with you. I have had a couple of experiences of feeling as though there was very much another energy in the room, and one of those experiences was quite explicit, and I've explained it on the channel before, where I definitely felt that there was a presence in the room, and in fact I could identify it as a teenage girl. But I didn't see her. I did see auras once. I think that's what I saw anyway. I looked up in the office where I was working and I literally could see buzzing, wobbly, kind of see-through energy around everybody in the room, and everybody's was vibrating at different speeds and looked different, and that was just remarkable. It stopped after a while, which was really disappointing, but that was a really incredible experience. And of course I've had a lot of transpersonal experiences. I've had a lot of experiences where I have felt that a disembodied intelligence was very much sending me a text message. Do you know what I mean? I've had lots of those kinds of experiences. I've had really intense dreams that have certainly been symbolic of something that I later realised had come to pass, all that kind of stuff. I think of that kind of stuff as being a normal part of my journey, though. Again, I wouldn't say any of that stuff is paranormal per se. I know you're solitary, but if you could celebrate Samhain with any departed person, who would you pick? Oh, there's so many people that I would want to spend Samhain with. Lately, I have been doing a lot of reading about Marie Catherine Laveau, and she was a really important voodoo witch. She held the rank of Supreme Witch in New Orleans in the 1800s, and I'm learning a lot about her, and she was just a really fascinating, extremely cool human. I would love to just spend the evening of Samhain at her feet, just learning everything that I could and just appreciating and enjoying listening to the stories and just drinking some of that good wisdom. Look her up, Marie Catherine Laveau, amazing, really interesting, interesting life, fascinating, popular witch, became kind of mainstream, you know, drew massive crowds, very respected. So I'd like to spend Samhain with her this year. That would be cool. Do you have a favourite type of tea for this season? Good question. I'm really enjoying this cinnamon and orange spice tea that was sent to me by someone, and it's really lovely. You would think it's got more of a Christmas flavour, but actually I think it's really good for Samhain. Let me just go and grab it. There's one kind of magic I love, and it's the magic of the jump cut. Okay, so I've just been into my kitchen and got it's called Harney and Sons is the make, and it's hot cinnamon spice, black tea with orange and sweet clove. It's lush, so gorgeous. I've been drinking this by the gallonful. So lovely. Also, cleansing teas are really good for Samhain. Samhain is a really good time for cleansing. It's a good time for letting go of what no longer serves. It's a good time for saying out with the old, in with the new. Chuck out that chintz today. So the Pucker Cleanse blend is one of my favourite ones. It's organic nettle, fennel and peppermint. This is a really good blend as well, guys. What is your ultimate Samhain album? Lightning at the Door by All Them Witches. Definitely. Good Samhain album. If you had only one sentence of advice for a new witch on Samhain, what would it be? One sentence? I already have to boil myself down to 140 characters on Twitter. This is a nightmare. One sentence for a new witch on Samhain. I have a quotation in the beginning of my Book of Shadows at the moment, which is now a Filofax of Shadows. I know, I can't help myself. But anyway, I have a sentence in the front of my Book of Shadows, and it is a quote from the Greek philosopher Epictetus, and it says, "Do not explain your philosophy, embody it." And I would definitely say that that would be the one thing I would say to a new witch on Samhain. Do not explain your philosophy, embody it. Embody it, baby. How do you deal with feeling not in the spirit of Samhain when everyone around you is? And how do you get yourself in the mood for the season? I think that every Samhain has to be what it is for you, and not every single one is going to be a straight banger. Do you know what I mean? Not everyone is going to really flick your switch. Sometimes there's stuff going on and you have to just let Samhain be what it's going to be. And I would say a very similar thing about Christmas, for example, is a really good other time when I think people try to get themselves in the mood and it doesn't really work because they are in the effort to get themselves in the mood, they're kind of like denying what they're going through, and it doesn't need to be like that. You can have Samhain in the way that feels right for you, and I've definitely had some where I felt more in the mood, and definitely some where I just sort of, you know, I acknowledged it, you know, in a really arbitrary way, and then went back on to dealing with my shit. I think sometimes Samhain can be similar for witches as Christmas is to a lot of people, where you tell yourself it's going to be amazing, it's going to be beautiful, everything's going to be perfect, we're going to have such a great time. And if it doesn't look like it's going that way, and if you can't bring yourself into that certain mindset where you're going to help it go that way, then you can become really disappointed and quickly feel really, you know, disillusioned. But it doesn't need to be like that. Samhain is a spiritual time. It's not always about everything being right and you being in the spirit of it. I mean, what does being in the spirit of it mean? I think that's what you need to ask yourself. What does being in the spirit of it mean? Does it mean that your altar looks a certain way and you spend loads of time at your altar? Does it mean you can make witchy videos about Samhain like the other witches do? Does it mean that you feel like the witches in those videos when they're talking about how excited they are? Because that's all really just us performing to a standard. It's performative, and I do this as well, and I have to check myself and say, hey, you know, it's your Samhain. It's your Samhain, and you treat it the way that you want to. And if that means that you wake up on the morning of Samhain and you just got to have a big old cry and watch a witchy movie, or if you have to journal and you can't really be involved in the Halloween festivities, or if you're not interested in talking about Samhain online because you're not feeling it, then that's how things have been for you this year. And that's just how it's got to go. Samhain will bring its wisdom to you, whatever situation you're in. There'll be something for you in this season, even if it's just that you focus on self-care and that is a breakthrough for you, or you have a realization that's just for you, that doesn't get shared with anyone else, but it's just yours and you take it and you own it. If you think about it, we talk so much about how Samhain is about going within, it's about reflection, it's about introspection, it's about inner work. Make it about those things. You know, don't feel like anything has to be performative, and don't feel like you're doing it wrong if you are not expressing your excitement, or your excitement is not being externally meted out in altar decorations or any of that stuff. Death versus rebirth. I remember in one video you said how one theme usually comes up more powerfully every Samhain. Which one is it for you this year? That's well fucking remembered. I did say that in a video, yes. Yeah, I do feel like one wins out. It's either about death and burying the thing and letting go of the thing, or it's about rebirth. It's about coming back to life, or something coming back to life. And this year it's death for me. Yeah, it's death. And things that, there's the things that I'm thinking about that I've got in my head now, they're taking a long fucking time to die already. There's things that are just in the last throes of life, and I'm ready at the hole in the ground, ready to just shove the stuff right in. I'm ready to say goodbye, and I'm waiting for that death rattle, and it's not here yet, you know. There's definitely a feeling of that death is the stronger thing, whereas last year it was definitely rebirth, wasn't it? And I can think of exactly why that was, and I'm still feeling the incredible overwhelming positivity of those experiences of the rebirth energy. Even now I'm still high on the afterglow of last year's Samhain, but this year it's definitely about death. It's definitely about putting things in the ground. In fact, I'm so interested at the moment in talking about death and thinking about death that it's one of the talks that I've put in my Skeleton Talk audio files, guys. If you want to purchase a little cute, very affordable collection of audio talks from me, one of them is actually about death, and they're on sale until November the 2nd. So yeah, I'll leave the link down below. You can check that out as well. One of the talks, like I said, is all about dealing with fear of death, dealing with trepidation around the idea of physical death. So that was an interesting one for me to talk about. And I felt called to talk about that. So, you know, death, both literal and metaphorical, is definitely of interest to me this year. How can you best prepare yourself for Samhain rituals or reflections? Is it best to focus on one ritual or do a few? This is my first Samhain and I'm wondering what energies would help or hinder my growth and insight. It's awesome that it's your first Samhain. Congratulations, you're going to have a lovely time, darling. It's interesting because I think that it definitely varies from individual to individual in terms of what energies and what themes are going to be best for you to focus on. So you really need to go within yourself and make that call. I definitely think if you're unsure of what to focus on, you could definitely use an oracle deck or a tarot deck and just really kind of ask spirit to take control. Just, you know, create a kind of a ritual vibe, a kind of heightened mindset, if you will, and just say, right, whatever comes through in this card or these 3 cards or whatever, these are the themes that I'm supposed to work on. These are the themes I'm supposed to be looking into. And it kind of takes a little bit of that pressure and that uncertainty out of your hands and just guides you down some really interesting avenues that you maybe hadn't even thought of considering at Samhain. I think before you do any rituals, just kind of accept and respect the energy of Samhain and how powerful it can be. You definitely may find that shadowy insights come up. You may find that there is a lot of intense emotion. You may find that you feel immersed in your emotions. You may find that experiences occur that you didn't really expect. And so you kind of do have to embrace that a little bit and go with it, I think. In terms of how many rituals you ought to do, again, that's really up to you as an individual, and I couldn't say. If it is your first Samhain though, do be sure that you don't overwhelm yourself. And I do think that that is an important thing to note. Sometimes we just take on too much. We get way too excited, particularly if we've only just started on the path and we want to do everything and we want to kind of go into every different avenue, and we end up burning out or really disappointing ourselves because we didn't do everything that we said we would do. We didn't do everything that we had originally committed to. So I definitely would recommend don't do that. And if anything, bite off a lot less than you can chew rather than more. What I mean by that is let your plans be underwhelming rather than overwhelming. It's much better to make a plan for Samhain and go, no, I could do so much more. Maybe I should push it. I could do these things as well. It's much better to feel like, oh, I could do more than it is to feel like this is just jam-packed wall-to-wall Samhain excitement. I can't wait, because actually 9 times out of 10 you're going to realise that you didn't leave much time in the schedule to do your other things and focus on your responsibilities. You didn't realise maybe how tiring ritual would be at Samhain, and that's kind of factored into things, and you end up feeling disappointed. And you don't want to end up there. You want to end up at the end of your first Samhain, if at all possible, going, wow, that was great, I can't wait for next year, rather than thinking, I need a fucking long nap and I'm really sad that I didn't do all the shit I planned, you know? Have you had anything amazing come to you in a Samhain meditation? If so, what was it? Yeah, I have amazing shit come to me every single year around this time of year. I remember once I was doing a really deep meditation. It was about 3 days before Samhain, and I saw Lilith. I went into the woods, I went into the forest, and I saw her, and she had her altar as like the stump of a great big oak tree, and she had all of this mad paraphernalia on it. She was a witch. Don't ask me why. I don't know. She had black hair as well, not red hair, but she was Lilith. I fucking knew she was Lilith. That was a really cool thing. I have journeyed into my matron's realm for Samhain. I like to do that. I think I will do that this year. And I use music, and I really just go down. I take the elevator almost down into the cold earth, and I go and I kind of commune with her. Mad shit has gone on during those travels, those journeys. Mad shit. Just so graphic and poetic and vivid and full colour. Incredible things I've seen. Oh my god, so good, really good. It's definitely a really good time of year for that stuff. Also this year I'm definitely going to be using my crystal ball, so that's going to be really good. And I have already started doing some mirror work, and that has been so intense, and I'm really thinking about doing that on the night of Samhain as well, actually doing some mirror work. I have a little mirror, like a prop-up mirror that's actually got lights on it, like a little vanity mirror, you know, like a little kind of Hollywood vanity kind of mirror. You press this little button and the lights come on. It's just like it's perfect. It's the perfect mirror for mirror work. Guys, this has been incredible. I didn't quite get to all of the questions, but I tried to select the ones that were the most focused on Samhain for the most part. I think the only one I answered that wasn't exactly Samhain oriented was the one about what kind of magic I like to do. But mostly I tried to keep it very much on track. I really hope that you enjoyed my answers to these questions and my extremely sexy witchy hat, which I think I would argue kind of looks a little bit more like a wizard's hat rather than a long conical, but never mind, whatever. I think it looks fabulous with the bones and such. This has been really, really fun. Thank you so much for your questions, guys. I really do appreciate being asked questions, and whenever I put the call out for questions, there are people there with stuff to ask me, and it's really, really lovely. I really do appreciate that. It's so nice. Thank you so much for joining me and spending time with me on my channel. Much love and many shadowy Samhain vibes. Blessed be.